No, it just says fish there. No, it's actually three. We go fish, go 5 minutes.
Ready? Okay. Okay, we're gonna continue talking about fish today, and I want to talk about. Last week we spoke about fish that have fins but maybe don't have scales. This week I want to do the reverse. I want to talk about fish that have scales but maybe don't have fins. But I want to take a side entrance. We're going to take a side road, and we'll get back where we're going. So, as follows: in Jewish, I don't know how you would call it. In Jewish consciousness, there's such a thing. We believe in Gilgul, right? That people come back and things now. There's a specific set of believing in Gilgul about people coming back in foods. And a specific amount of that is related to Shabbos foods. Where people could come back as a Gilgul and transmigrate into a Shabbos food. Now, it's not such a rare occurrence that a fish or a chicken was perceived to have cried out Shema Yisrael before it was killed for Shabbos. And there's a guy, Rabbi Dr. Tuvia Preschel, today. He wrote in the Jewish press. He wrote for years and years and years. Today they put out his articles in the Sefer. They're up to 9 volumes. He was prolific, and he has in Chelik Sheni a whole collection of all the different heilige fishes over the Deiris who cried out Shema Yisrael, who were buried, who weren't eaten, who were eaten, all the different stories of it. And it's not as rare as you would think, unless you think that it's just Chassidish Maiselach that happened here and there. There's a story about a chicken who they shechted it, the head came off, and it didn't die, which is physically possible because you could shech. It's really a shechita. It's not a good shechita. It means you shechted too high and you didn't sever the kan and the veshet enough, and the chicken walked around. And this was in the town of Metz, the Shagasariya city, and the Shagasariya instructed them that although you could just kill it, it's fine. They shouldn't eat it. You should bury it, and they buried him in the outskirts of the basic forest. We know this because the Shagazari had a son, Reb Asher, who left over kisviyadis of some psakim that he heard from his father, and his son-in-law published this in Hapardes or Apeles, in the early 1800s. And the son-in-law, the guy who was publishing it, said, "Listen, we don't know, but this is a story with the Shagazari." So this is something that happened, via Mol. Now, in particular, there was a fish in Vienna called the Heilige fish of Vienna. It was a fish that was being prepared for Shabbos. I can't tell you the exact year that it happened. And ostensibly, supposedly, it cried out Shema Yisrael. The woman of the house who was preparing it was totally frightened. She went to the Rav, and the Rav told her, a fish that cries out Shema Yisrael shouldn't be eaten. It should be buried. And they buried it in a small Beis HaKvaros in Vienna and erected on top of it a matzeva. And instead of what are you going to write, they don't know exactly the ma'asim tevim of the fish. So instead of writing about the life of the fish, they put a little statue of a fish. And there's a statue of a fish. This Beis HaKvaros is it still exists. It's right outside an old age home, a small Jewish old age home in Vienna. And you can see that it's chipping away. It's an old graveside. But there's a graveside with a fish. Now, there are those who say that it just was the graveside of a fishmonger, someone who sold fish from a long time ago, and this whole story never happened. But allegedly, there's a story, and this fish is buried there with this matzeva of a fish. Now, this is an innocuous matzeva of a fish. Big deal, right? It's a matzeva of a fish. No harm, no foul. Okay. Now, I want to talk about a matzeva of a fish that could be much more harmful. In Gaza, a long time ago, the Plishtim lived there. During the Yemei Shveit HaSheftim, during Shimshon and the Sheftim, the Plishtim lived in Gaza. Now, the god of the Plishtim was called Dagon. Daled Gimel Vav Nun, which sounds like it has to do with fish. The god of the Plishtim was called Dagon. Several times in the Psukim and Sheftim, it's Muzkar, this, fish god, the god Dagon. Now, is a great machlokes amongst Rishonim, really early Rishonim, what the taich of Dagon is. In the, Rashi sometimes brings down, in the dictic Rashis that we skip, Rashi brings down from Menachem or Donash. So Donash and Menachem have a great machlokes what the taich of Dagon, the fish god of the god of the Plishtim Dagon is. Menachem says, in Machberes Menachem, he says that Dagon is Miloshin Dag. It's the same shirish as Dag. He says, but v'lo yedu alanu, what the tzura of the getchka looked like. We don't know exactly what the idol looked like, but it was the fish idol. Whatever that meant, it was the fish idol, the power of the fish. It was Aquaman. I don't know exactly what it is. We don't know the thing. Now Rashi takes Machberes Menachem, takes Menachem's pirush that Dagon means fish, and runs with it, and says that the tzura of the getchka was fish. Rashi says the tzura of the Avodah Zarah was fish. the Radak as well says the tzura of the Avodah Zarah was fish. Comes along Donash and Rabbeinu Tam no less and say no, shtosim. Dag from Dagon is not fish. It's Miloshin Dagon, like craps. Miloshin craps. It's the god of the craps. And what exactly the tzura was wasn't a fish. It was a tzura of something out of Avodah Zarah. And says Rabbeinu Tam, I have a clara raya that it couldn't have been a fish. The Avodah Zarah, the tzura couldn't have been a matzev of a fish. He says, how do I know? Because the Psukim in Shmuel Aleph tells the story as follows. During Eli's Tkufa as Kohen Gadol, Klal Yisrael went out to battle with the Plishtim, and they brought the Aron, Bris Hashem, with them to battle the Plishtim, right? They brought the Aron out with them. And the Plishtim captured the Aron, and they took it back home. So the Plishtim weren't sure where to store the Aron, so it says the Plishtim took the Aron, and they took it to Beis Dagon, to the house of their god, to Dagon's house. It says they come the next morning, and Dagon is lying on the floor, and the Aron is still sitting there. Okay, something's, going on over here. They double down. They leave him there another night. The next night they come back, and Dagon is lying on the floor, and he's all broken. And the pasuk describes how Dagon is broken, and it says as follows. The pasuk in Shmuel Aleph says, V'roish Dagon, the head of Dagon, v'shtei kapois yadav, and his two hands, krusais el hamiftan, were chopped off by the base that was holding him. Meaning the head of it and his arms fell off. It was shattered. It fell into the thing. And from this, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah and Daf Malach learns out that Avodah Zarah shenishtabra me'eleh, and Avodah Zarah that got broken on its own, possibly loses its status in Avodah Zarah, because ostensibly the adherents of the Avodah Zarah would say, if it can't watch itself, it probably can't watch us. So this is a sugya. But now, let me think about it for a second. As far as I know, fish don't have arms. A matzeva, a graven image, a matzeva that would be in the shape of a fish, would not have arms. Fish have heads. The head of the fish could fall off. But fish don't have arms. What would it mean that Dagon fell? His head and his arms were broken. So says Rabbeinu Tam, and says Donash, this is a klara raya that the shirish of the word Dagon is not miloshin dag, it's miloshin Dagon. It means, craps. It doesn't mean fish. Because fish, it can't mean fish don't have hands. No, we don't. But we don't know what the tzura of the Avodah Zarah was then. It was representative of the power of of the God who takes care of the crops. It could have been a human. It could have been whatever. It could have been anything else. Now, so other Rishonim say it was a mix. It was the bottom was like a fish, the top was like a human, or vice versa. Akabanim, this is Rabbeinu Tam's raya. So now put this in your mind that this let this fact hold true that l'chayra fish do not have arms, and Rabbeinu Tam uses this as a raya to prove that Dagon is not doesn't have arms. Now here comes the shaila. So here's the shaila. We said last week, let's just chaz this over so we have this in the back, in the pocket. We said last week that the Gemara in Chulin of Samach Vav says, Kol sheyesh loi kaskeses, yesh loi snapir. Anything that has fins, we know automatically that it has scales. I'm sorry, if I can't. Anything that has scales, we know automatically that it has fins. You don't have to search for the fins. Okay, so now if I was to present you with a fish that has only scales, even though you can't find the fins, the halach would be you're allowed to eat it. So here's the shaila that was presented. The Taisus Yamtiv writes in his Pirush Madane Melech on Chulin of Samach Vav, he writes a shaila that happened to him as follows. Says the Taisus Yamtiv. He says, V'ani b'hiyosi av bezdin v'ram b'kila Kadesh Vienna. When I was the av bezdin and the Rav in Kila Kadesh Vienna in Wien, incidentally the same city that has the matzeva of a fish, Hevi Elai HaChacham Rav Aaron Reife. This Rabbi Dr. Aaron Reife presented me with a fish, dag hanikr b'lashonim, a dag that was called in their language Skincus marinus. That's what he calls it, a Skincus marinus. Now, I don't know Latin, but skincus is skink is the Latin word for lizard, and marinus is the Latin word for marine. So it's a marine lizard of a variety or another. That's what it is. It's a marine lizard that was brought in front of him. It was found in the Yam HaSfardi, which in this context means the Mediterranean. And here's the catch. Who sam hamavas? It's poisonous. It's a poisonous sea lizard that if you eat it, you'll be damaged. But the harakachim, the pharmacists, yoidim pu'ulu lahitzieres, they know how to extract the venomous glands from this sea lizard, so they could extract it. And then they make medical concoctions out of the flesh of this skincus marinus. It has all the definitive signs of being a kosher fish. The gam yesh le kaskasim. It has scales on its whole body. Gam yesh le kaskasim al kol gufay, but ve'ein lo snapir. It has no fins. This is what the Taisus Yamtiv is presented with. This is the shayla. They bring to him a sea lizard, a skincus marinus from the Mediterranean that has certain medicinal properties that people want to use it for. It's poisonous. It has scales. It doesn't have fins. What do you do about this? It says the Taisus Yamtiv, he was confused. Taisus Yamtiv says, Mishalani alzeh, I don't know what to do, and I didn't know what to answer. Now here's his first attempt at cracking it. Now many poskim opined about this, and there's many shittas about this, but his first attempt at cracking the kosher status, the kasher status. Now just one more clue. Taisus Yamtiv holds that it's shver, that the Torah would say anything that has scales is kosher, meaning yukaf halazach. You find something with scales, you can eat yukaf halazach. But one of the things that have scales are poisonous. He says that's like the Torah is like setting you up to fail, because the Torah is going to tell you anything that has scales, good to go, you can eat it. You're going to go fishing, you pull up this thing that has scales, you don't know what it is, but it has scales, must be kosher, you eat it, you drop dead. So the Torah set you up, like it gave you no warning that this is a poisonous fish. He says, the Torah wouldn't do that, like give you no warning that it's a poisonous fish and just leave you hanging. He says, so could it be that it's really kosher? So here's his first suggestion. Says the Taisus Yamtiv, possibly you could say that hands, the lizard looks like a lizard. It has little hands and little feet, 2 hands, 2 feet. It has a tail like a lizard, it has a snout like a lizard, and it's full of scales. Says the Taisus Yamtiv, perhaps we could suggest that the hands of the lizard are fins. It says maybe hands are called fins too. This thing swims with its hands, that's how it swims. That's its method of getting around. Just like fins, the Gemara describes as something that the fish uses to swim with. So hands, the fish uses it to swim around with. Hands are fins too, says the Taisus Yamtiv. Now he does not bring a raya from Dagan, but l'chayru we have a raya from Dagan. According to the way Menachem taich Dagan, that Dagan is miloshin fish, and he's not disputing that the pasuk in Shmuel Aleph Parak Daled says, Parak Hey says that its hands and its head fell off. L'chayru there was the understanding that a fish that presented with some sort of hands could still be looked at as a fish. It had the body of a fish, even though its extremities were like hands, like a human or whatever. It still could be called a fish, and the hands could serve as a fish because the hands could serve as fins. This is what the Taisus Yamtiv suggests. Now he doesn't like this for obvious reasons. It's a shver thing to say that a fish that has hands could be called hand, could be called skate, could be called fins. It's like a hard thing to wrap your head around. So Taisus Yamtiv says that he doesn't think that that's lemaisa. So he suggests 2 different things. Now, both of these things received. Now, 1 second, just Laman Yedu, the Tu Ashar, which is from the Gedolei Achronim, Chashav Achron, says like the Taisus Yamtiv that hands are fins, and says it's a kosher fish. Hands are fins, you're good to go. So this is not just Taisus Yamtiv's a havamina, like a throwaway havamina that doesn't go with. The tuashar says it's a kosher fish, no problem. Hands or fins, it's a kosher fish. That's what the first attempt at cracking it is. The second attempt, says the Taisus Yamtiv, is as follows. He says maybe when Chazal said that kol sheyeshloi kaskesas yeshloi snapi, or anything that has scales automatically has fins, they were talking about the fish that were available in their time. Meaning fish keep on intermingling and changing, and there are fishes that are crossbreeds, and 2 different fish that were never exposed to each other because of global warming are now exposed to each other, and their children are a new variety of fish. Says the Taisus Yamtiv, it's possible that Chazal weren't saying like exclusively, like these are all the fish that could ever exist, and these are the ones that are kosher. This is the sim. And Chazal was saying the fish that we've ever seen, that's what the Taisus Yamtiv says. Now this is a very it's a troubling nekuda. It's troubling. So first of all, I just want to read you. There's a Gemara in Chulin. The Gemara in Chulin and Daf Beis Amud Aleph says as follows. The Gemara says, Tana Devei B'Shmuel, Zois HaChaya Asher Teichlu. This is the chaya that you should eat. Melamed Shetafas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mikol Minu Min. HaKadosh Baruch Hu grabbed from every min that existed the Herolei LeMoshe, and he showed Moshe. V'Amalei Zois HaChol v'Zois LeSeichel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol showed Moshe Rabbeinu, this you could eat, this you can eat, and etc. Now, what the Gemara in Chulin is talking about is chayas. It's not talking about dafka fish. Taisvis has a whole maracha, what's included in it, what's not included in it. But akapanim, it's possible that from the Gemara in Chulin is a Mefurish Gemara that seems to imply that HaKadosh Baruch Hu very clearly showed Moshe Rabbeinu each min. So if we have a halacha Moshe Messina that tells us that kol sheyesh le kaskesas yesh le snapi, or anything that has scales has fins, l'chayru you should need to be able to take that to the bank. You shouldn't be able to say that was then, but now fish changed. There could be new fish. There could thing, and because of this, the Pri Chadash in Simon Pei Gimel, he strongly opposes this teretz of the Taisus Yamtiv. He says, V'shari le'mar, this is very strong. He says, V'shari le'mar, the Taisus Yamtiv made a mistake, he says. L'halis al ha-sefer, to write al ha-sefer, Dvarim zarim ke'elu, such outside strange things like this. Shekemat oiker tchumin v'gvulin shegavlu rishonim. He's almost being oiker the whole tchum and the gvul, the chazal were keveya. He's making the whole thing kind of worthless. Whatever the Gemara says in Nidan and Chulin to describe for us what a kosher fish is, by the time the Taisis Yom Tov is done with it, it's almost worthless. And in general, he's giving people a makam to be mefakvik about all different chazal. Maybe whenever chazal say something, they spoke what they knew. They didn't speak what they don't know. He says, "Hamukdashim va'amitim the kashem shehorkiv minachod after shehorkiv mina macherim." Says just like you're going to say this is a brand new species that's a mix of several species. Maybe there's all sorts of other new species that are mixed. The klal razal nishon neifel v'arza, and then what chazal said as a rule is just nothing. It falls to the ground. Chalila v'chas. He says, so the Pri Chadash strongly opposes this idea of saying that it's a product of Harkava. This is not an original fish. This didn't exist in Mechazal. Okay, so that doesn't work. So continues the Taisis Yom Tov. Taisis Yom Tov himself rather falls off this terrace, but not because of this. Continues Taisis Yom Tov, and he says a third potential reason why these fish should not be kosher. And this one he says it's a whole deek and a pasuk. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but Taisis Yom Tov says that the Torah repeats this rule twice. Kol sheyesh lo snaper v'kaskesas, you could eat it, and kol she'ein lo snaper v'kaskesas, that you shouldn't eat. To which the Gemara in Chulin of Samach Vav and Beis asks, why the repetition? Why are the Torah saying the same thing twice? Kol sheyesh lo, kol she'ein lo. I understand. If yesh lo I can eat, so ein lo I can't eat. And the Gemara says, lavrav b'shnei b'lav v'aseh. We want you to be over a lav. When you eat the wrong fish, you're over a lav and aseh. But says the Taisis Yom Tov, perhaps, and he has a tzaddik in the Lashon HaPasuk, perhaps, just like we know, there are many species of things that live underwater. There are fish, and there are call it sea creatures. They're not fish, meaning fish is a scientific definition. It's a fish. It does what fish do. It breathes like a fish. It eats like a fish. It lives like a fish. There are other things under there that are sea creatures. There are mammals, certain mammals that live under the sea. There are certain, hybrids that live under the sea. They're sea creatures. So what the Torah is telling us is that sea creatures don't have the same heter of yesh le'snaper v'kaskesas. By sea creatures, we don't have this rule that as long as it has scales, you're good to go. By sea creatures, you have to know that it has both fins and scales. So it says the Taisis Yom Tov, perhaps a sea creature like the Skincus marinus, which is a sea lizard, which, yes, it has scales, but it doesn't have the rules of fish. It has the rules of sea creatures. And the rules of sea creatures is a different rule. It needs to have fins and scales. That's the Taisis Yom Tov's another. And the middle Taisis Yom Tov says, l'chayr it's aser, because a sea creature that doesn't have fins and scales, you're not allowed to eat. Now this, the Pri Chadash doesn't like either. He says you're making something brand new. Doesn't say this in Chazal. The Gemara doesn't make this distinction. It's Badam Eliba, he says. The Taisis Yom Tov is making up a brand new criteria for kashrus of the sea, and it doesn't say it anywhere. So Mechades to make up something new. No, he doesn't like it. Now, but so ends the Pri Chadash. The Skincus marinus is permitted for eating, says the Pri Chadash. I see it. It's something that's you eat it for medicine, but meaning it's not very tasty. The way it was eaten was medicine, but it says it's permitted to be eaten because it presents with scales. Kol sheyesh le'kaskesas yesh le'snaper. That's a rule from Chazal. Don't tell me Chazal, we're only talking about what they knew. Don't tell me it's a harkava. Don't tell me, all things. It's kosher fish. He doesn't even get into if arms are fins, they're not fins. You could be seimich that it must have at some point had fins and you're allowed to eat it. This is what the Pri Chadash says. Now, the Lamashal others, the Shaila Meshiv, takes this almost all the way the same way, and then at the last minute he makes a pivot. The Shaila Meshiv says, l'chayr, by all the simonim that are given from Chazal, it should be mutter to eat the Skincus marinus, but says that Maisa, it's poisonous. And poisonous, you're not supposed to eat. He says, that's what the Gemara said, when the Gemara says, Kol sheyesh le'kaskesas yesh le'snaper, then the Gemara asks, so why do we have to say both of them in the pasuk? The Gemara says, Yagdil Torah v'yadir. Yagdil Torah v'yadir. In fact, the Shaila Meshiv, we pointed this out last week, there's no benefit of saying it again. Says the Shaila Meshiv, the benefit was what the Torah was telling you, that there's going to be asid l'seiv kamaderis, to be one animal that has kaskesas, and you're going to assume it has fins and you can eat it too, but don't, because it's not good for you because it's poisonous. So the Shaila Meshiv learns which means that be'etzem the ikar adin, it's mutter, but unless it's poisonous, so don't eat it. That's how the Shaila Meshiv says it. Now, Lamaisa like this. Lamaisa, in 1850, some new science came out where they changed the name of this creature, and it's no longer called the Skincus marinus. Now it's called the Skincus skincus, which means it's a plain lizard. It's a lizard. It doesn't really live in the water. It lives in the mud under the water. It has the ability to hold its breath and swim through the water to get to the mud. And it burrows into the mud, that's where it lives. And it has the ability to extract oxygen from the mud. They changed the name, and it isn't a fish b'chlal, meaning the whole thing is a tayis. It's not a fish. And I'll read you the Dark Truth. In 1850, a German Rav, Avram Zakuta, I think his name was, published an article in the Shem Ritzion HaNe'eman saying that the new science of the day clearly tells us that the skinkis is not a fish, and therefore the whole shmooze with the Pri Chadash and the Taisis Yamtif and the Rabbi Yonis and Eibshitz and Shalem Meshiv and then the Tvu Ashar, it's all out the window. The Stam, it's hypothetical. They're talking about something that doesn't exist. There is no such a thing as a fish the way they're describing it. And he says science tells us that this is not a fish. Now, the Darkei Tshuva, the Munkach Rebbe, brings this down, and the Darkei Tshuva is very unhappy about this. He says, Shuvri Isi b'Shem Ritzion HaNe'eman Kunter Tzadik Aleph Taf Kuf Pei Beis Shehetek Sham Tshuva Rav Gadol Echad Medinas Ashkenaz. There's a tshuva there from a German Rav who won't be named, he says. Sheherach Gamkein LaAsrei V'Hela B'Rayis the Baal Karchach Kol Ma She'amru Kol Sheyesh Le'Fain. He says, and he says, and he brings from science, he says, B'Seif Dvar of Hevi Mima Shematzu B'Sifrei HaMechkar. He brings from what he finds in the Sifrei HaMechkar L'Chachmei HaTeva from scientists. Shemanu Hadag Stinkis Marinus Hanizker B'Chlal HaKravim. They count it as part of the scorpion genome. It's a scorpion. It's Batzim a scorpion. It's not official, calls it. It's a regular sheret. It's shratzim. It has nothing to do with fishes. Ayin Sham Baricha says, how he had the chutzpah to put his tshuva between the tshuva of the Goyinim. He says, you're just bringing a science from Goyim. Shekal Dvar of Nemra Al Pidivri Teresein Akdesha Behavi Raya Dvar of Midivri Mishainim Ibnei Ameinu. Who brings a raya from Goyish, a scientist. Who cares what they say? One way or the other way. That's not how you bring a raya to finish up the shayla. So this is the Darkei Tshuva's, vociferous protest. The Yamta suggested it without knowing anything yet. Now, what's worse than that is forget about the Yamta suggesting it as a Havamina. The Chassam Sofer, and this probably was not published at the time that the Darkei Tshuva was writing this Chassam Sofer, not in a Tshuva, but in Chidushim al Hashas, on Chulin and Daf Samach Vav. The Chassam Sofer says exactly the same thing. The Chassam Sofer says, I know from science that this is not a fish b'chlal, it's just a lizard, and therefore it's permitted to eat it. It's usher to eat it, it's sheretz hamayim, it has nothing to do with fish. Chassam Sofer says it, the Malbim wrote it in one of his svarim. The Darkei Tshuva Mistama did not know. I don't think the Darkei Tshuva would have been as upset if the Chassam Sofer said it. I just don't, I can't tell you for sure, but that's my feeling. The Chassam Sofer in Chulin Daf Samach Vav says the exact same thing, and the Malbim says it too, and the Metzias is like that the Skinkis marinus is not a fish, it's a lizard. Now, there is things that they want to learn from it, but it's not a fish, it's a lizard. Now, once we're talking about this, I just want to talk about a second type of fish that isn't a fish maybe, and also has to do with sand, so let's just talk about that for a minute. There's a Chassidische Inyan. It's a totally Chassidische Inyan. It's not brought down in Shulchan Aruch, it's not brought down in Rambam, it's not brought down, no Psak Svarim bring it down. It's a Chassidische Inyan that's brought down in Reb Shmuel of Darig's Tshuvas. There's a tshuva called, the Shal Tshuvas Sefer called Oil Shmuel, from Reb Shmuel of Darig, who's a Talmud, Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, who brings down that we have a Messiah, he says, in the Chassidish Welt, we have a Messiah from the Baal Shem Tov, who possibly has a Messiah from Eliyahu Hanavi. That is a type of fish called Schleie fish. That's the German name for it. Schleie fish, we don't eat, but you're allowed to eat them the whole year. You only don't eat them during the months of June, July, August. Schleie fish are treif during June, July, August. That's when you can't eat Schleie fish. Azay is a Messiah from Baal Shem Tov, Messiah from Eliyahu Hanavi. This is what Shmuel of Darig brings down. Now, it's most of the Tmiyah. What does that mean? It's a kosher fish, not a kosher fish. So, if you look at this fish, the Schleie fish, in English it's called the tench fish. Chaim Ginsberg actually told me yesterday in his as a kid, they had one of these. It's called the doctor fish. It swims around the bottom of the aquarium and it keeps the whole aquarium healthy. A tench fish is a good fish to have in your aquarium. Golden tench, they look nice. People put them in their aquariums. It's a tench fish, but if you look at a tench fish, it has fins, it has scales, it's a regular fish. It's a tench fish, it's similar to a carp. It's so what's this Schleie fish? What is this Baal Shem Tov that says that a Schleie fish you can't eat? Well, what is this psak? So brings Reb Shmuel of Darig in his Sefer, Imrei Shefer, he brings as follows. There's a Gemara in Makis, and Daf Tazayin, that says as follows. The Gemara says that if you eat Haiman da Achel Benisa de Beikarba, Malkinon le Mishum Sheretz HaSheretz Ala Aretz. Someone who eats Benisa de Beikarba, we don't know what that is exactly, is like it because of Sheretz HaSheretz Ala Aretz. It's considered a Sheretz on the ground. Now there's a Machlekes Rishonim. How to understand that case? Some Rishonim say it means it's a sheretz, it's a real sheretz. It happens to be a sheretz that has some aquatic, capabilities, similar to, let's say, to the skinkis, where it could swim in the water a little bit. But if you eat it, you should know it's a sheretz. It's not a fish. It's treif, it's sheretz aretz and yichayev. Other Rishonim, the Ramban and others, but it really comes from the Ramban, say that we're talking about a fish but it's a fish that's able to live on dry land. And there is such a thing. It's called a lungfish, where basically the fish it's an adaptation where the fish has some sort of lungs, and it could live in like muddy land for quite a while. It doesn't die. As long as it's like in mud, good mud, it will live. It could breathe in the mud. And on that fish, the Gemara in Makkas is saying that if you eat it, you're chayav sheretz alamayim. Sheretz alaretz. So even though it's a regular fish, but since it lives on the land, it gets other dinim and it's tree. So says Rav Shmuel of Darig in the Sefer Imre Shefer, Masama, that's where the Baal Shem Tov took it from. He says the shlaya fish, the tench fish, is able to live in very, very muddy water for a long time, and it has the ability to like process air out of the mud for many, many months. So the Baal Shem Tov said during the dry months of June, July, and August, when the rivers are all dried out, and the tench fish are mamish in the bed of the river, and it looks like they're shratzim, they're creepy crawlies that are just like making their way through the mud, said the Baal Shem Tov, you can't eat it, because then it's like the shratzim asheritz, it's like the Gemara in Makkas. But come during January, when there's plenty of water in the river and the tench fish is swimming around normal, okay, then it's a fish, then you could eat it. This is what the Imre Shefer says to explain this Baal Shem Tov's chumrah. Now, the Darkei Tshuva brings down this din from the Imre Shefer, and he brings even a little bit more of a background. He writes as follows. The Darkei Tshuva writes, when I was by here, it says Keshehisi tachas tel kvoid kedushas admar hagoyin hakadosh rashke b'hag marish zatzal. That's the shin of his son, the Divrei Cheskel's son, the Divrei Chaim's grandson. He said, when I was by the Marash Mishineva, Sha'alti es pikachem me'inyan hashmua sha'imrim. I asked him about the shmua that they say, she'mukubal me'at tzadikim she'midar l'shalafenenu. It's mukubal for shem the tzadikim from the dar before us, shalei la'achlei, not to eat this fish. V'yesh shehem nimnoim mila'achlei. And there are those who menei to eat it, rak bebeis chadashim, Tammuz v'av, only during Tammuz and Av. The Hegedli b'shem Rabbi hagoyin rashke b'hag merenu Rav Shalom Zatzal. That's the Sar Shalom of Bells. He says, they told me, b'shem, the shin of it told me in the name of the Sar Shalom, Shebebeis chadashim anal, during these 2 months, loy haya achlai. The Sar Shalom wouldn't need it. Asher shekol inyan hamaniya mil achlai ein al pidin. And here the Darkei Tshuva says something that maybe doesn't stem with Imre Shefer. He says, and he told me that the whole mani over here has nothing to do with the halacha klal. There's no real chash al pidin that this is a sheretz. You're allowed to eat it. He continues. It's apisay. During those 2 months, there's something that's attached to this fish. That's mishum zuama, and really you can't eat them during those 2 fish. So during those 2 months. So really, you have the Imre Shefer of Shmuel of Darig who's saying it as a halachic perspective. Well, to be honest, nobody really knows. Meaning, they have a Messiah. There's a Chassidish Messiah not to eat tench fish during these 2 months. Nobody really knows the reason. Shmuel of Darig says, "Mistama, it's a halacha in Doimet Yana Gemara and Makkas." Darkei Tshuva says that he heard from the Sar Shalom that it's an union of Kabbalah. Now, if you look in like these type of svarim about fish, some even explain that the reason why a fish is only mutter if it has scales is because fish have a certain zuama and they shake it off when the scales come off. So a fish like this that has extra zuama, you can't take it off. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but Akbanim, there's a Chassidish minik that's muskar in many Chassidish svarim not to eat the tench fish. Now, I don't know if anybody eats tench fish. I think it tastes like carp, but it's like less good than carp. So I don't know if it's a popular fish to eat b'chlal ever. But these are 2 fish that live in sand. The sandfish, the Skinkis marinus, and the tench fish that lives in mud, that burrows in mud. And both of them, because of how they lived and how they were different than regular fish, made very big shilas. One, the Skinkis marinus, the skinkis is not something that's eaten today. And if anything, it ultimately vindicated Chazal. Like it came to be a raya that Chazal, when they said, Kol sheyesh lekaskeses yesh lesnaper, knew exactly what they were talking about. And even l'seiv kamaderis, 2 millennia later, we were never able to find a fish that broke those rules. A fish that presented with kaskeses and didn't present. If anything, I saw Rabbi Meiselman from he has a Sefer Torah and Science and Torah. He uses the skinkis as like a big raya to kama gedolim divrei chachamim. Like Chazal knew what they were talking about. Even when you think it's an obscure scientific detail, Chazal knew exactly what they're talking about, and it was never possible to find one. Now, Lamaisa, he just as a postscript, he wrote to the Smithsonian Museum and asked them if they have any specimens of fish that have scales but don't have fins, and he publishes the email to which they wrote back, yes, of course we do, and they sent him back the name. My Latin stops at Skinkis marinus. There's a name of an eel, some sort of eel that has scales but doesn't have fins, and he writes, Oid Chazan L'Moyed, he'll go through why that also is not a kasha. maybe it has some sort of fins, maybe it doesn't, etc. But at the bottom, it really ends up being a raya of Kama Gedel Divrei Chacham. And in regards to the tench fish, so that's a Chassidish minig that isn't musker in Shulchan Aruch. I don't know if that's a minig. I don't know. I don't know if that's something that still exists. I don't even know if that's a fish that's for sale, meaning if that's a fish people eat anywhere in the world. Or it's just, I don't even know. I don't know the status of that one. But at the bottom, it's interesting that there's a extra legal, like new isser on a fish because it burrows in the mud, because it presents as a sheretz. Okay, I don't know. There's a lot more to say about fish, but maybe we'll move on to the next course. Maybe we'll go to like birds next week. We'll see. What is that?
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.